the synod in Rome was held in the summer of the year 430, and by November of 430, the Emperor Theodosius says that we're going to settle this. We're going to have a general council, he calls it, beginning on Pentecost Sunday in the year 431, which would have been June 7th. Now, Theodosius, the emperor, no one challenges his right to call this council, and he sees it as that he has the right to do this because his understanding is that the empire depends upon the true worship of God. He, therefore, has a vested interest in the true worship of God, and he is going to call the council together. The two main players that we've looked at so far are St. Cyril of Alexandria, right, and Nestorius in Constantinople, the bishop there, and the Pope Celestine. The other patriarch or major archbishop, whatever term you want to use, is John of Antioch, and he is sympathetic, not a staunch backer, but a sympathetic towards Nestorius. And he writes him a letter telling him to calm down, take it easy, don't get caught up in the back and forth, and just accept the use of the term Theotokos, the Mother of God. Accept that. So the council is supposed to start in Ephesus, right? That modern-day where is modern-day Turkey, and the emperor calls a representation from each of the regions. So not every bishop is supposed to show up. He doesn't want every bishop to show up. Maybe it's too expensive. I say why just a selection, but he does a representation from each area. Cyril, never satisfying with the uncertainty, invites far more than just a selection. He takes over 50 bishops with him from Egypt, and many priests, and even more numbers of very zealous monks who come to his defense regularly. So he shows up with his big numbers that are going to vote his way, right? And he finds Nestorius already there with 16 of his followers. So he outnumbers them. And they begin waiting. So they arrive early, and the others don't arrive on time. And they start throwing barbs back and forth. Eventually, the patriarch or the bishop of Jerusalem shows up. He favors St. Cyril of Alexandria. The local bishop in Ephesus, he's a big defender of Cyril of Alexandria, and because Constantinople's been messing in their affairs, and he doesn't want Nestorius there. But they keep waiting on John of Antioch to show up, and the papal legates, the representatives, right? They are slow. And John of Antioch sends a letter, we're coming, we're just delayed. And as far as Western bishops, there are none because of all that chaos, right? All that chaos from the barbarians coming in, the difficulty of assembling. The furthest west is Macedonia, so just north of modern-day Greece, right? That's as far west as the bishops come from. But the papal legates, as representatives of Peter in the midst of the church. So Peter, the head of the council of bishops, the head of the apostles, amongst the fullness of the church, they're present. And yet they're waiting for them to show up. Now, the council was supposed to start on June 7th, which was Pentecost. By 2 weeks later, Cyril is tired of waiting. And so he says tomorrow, on the 21st, he says, tomorrow we're just going to start things. Even though John of Antioch isn't here. And we're just going to start things tomorrow. I have this commission given to me by Pope Celestine, and I can carry this out. I'm supposed to be leading this, so we're going to start tomorrow. And he opens the council then on June 22nd. The 68 bishops who are more in favor of Nestorius are outraged that he's not waiting, and they throw a fit. They're not going to take part in it. But he has 160 who back him. So he opens the council. Now, Nestorius, probably you can sympathize why he doesn't want to take part in this. because his main accuser is also the judge. So he's very suspicious of entering the chamber, and he's not going to do it. And he doesn't go in. He won't go in. And the council begins with a reading of the Nicene Creed, reading of the Creed from Nicaea. According the way Cyril saw it, his teaching is, again, just an explanation of an extrapolation of what Nicaea taught. He's just going on from there. So we are going to begin with the Council of Nicaea, and everyone approves of all the bishops there approve of the Creed of Nicaea. And then they read his second letter that he sent to Nestorius. That second letter he sent, and they vote on it. And they say, this is complete conformity with Nicaea, and this all takes place on June 22nd. They read Pope Celestine's letter to Cyril, and then that third letter that Cyril sends to Nestorius, which with all those 12 anathemas that kind of threw all the fuel on the fire, or more fuel on the fire, they are not read at this point. They appear a bit later, and they are never voted upon. They make their way into the final acts of the council, but they're never voted upon at this point. Once they have voted on these things, right? A couple of the bishops there say that they've heard Nestorius blaspheming. They've heard him saying that, for example, how could God be nursed by the Virgin Mary? This is preposterous, right? So basically, Nestorius is just being consistent with what he thought about how you can attribute things, right? How you can predicate things, say this is of that. But they accuse him of blasphemy at this point, and they vote to have him, they ultimately vote to have him deposed, right? Deposed as the Archbishop of Constantinople. And Cyril puts together extracts of Nestorius' writings. He has all those there, all the things he thinks are problematic, and the authority of earlier church fathers. So certain things that St. Athanasius wrote, earlier church fathers wrote, maybe St. Irenaeus, putting those all together as backing up his teaching. And really, even though there is a lot of personal issues going on here, he does St. Cyril of Alexandria's teaching. There's nothing wrong with it, even though you have it is perfectly in conformity. It is in conformity with the earlier faith, but you do have that. Perhaps he wasn't the best one to be in charge of the council. Finally, as the canons and the letter from Celestine indicate, the bishops passed a sentence on Nestorius. So before the day is over, they've done all these things, they've read through all these things, they've put this all together, and by the end of the day, they pass a sentence on Nestorius. All takes place on one day, and part of the decree of that sentence was, "Our Lord Jesus Christ, whom he," Nestorius, "has blasphemed, decrees through the Holy Synod here present that Nestorius is excluded from the episcopal dignity and every priestly assembly." And Nestorius responds, poor me. I was summoned here by Cyril, who assembled this council, who presides over it, who is its judge, who is acting in the place of the Bishop of Rome, and Cyril is everything. So he's irate, and he writes a letter of complaint to the emperor. And then 4 days later, the Bishop of Antioch shows up, and he is livid to find out this has all happened before he has shown up, as if they have no respect for him or Antioch, and they're doing this without his presence. And so he writes a letter of protest to the emperor, and has some of those bishops who wouldn't go in because they thought this was an insult to start it early. And he excommunicates Cyril of Alexandria and the Bishop of Ephesus. And this too is sent to the emperor. Okay, so yes.
So Cyril was the Bishop of Rome.
No. What he's saying is that Cyril of Alexandria, who's the Archbishop or the Patriarch, the Bishop of Alexandria, is acting in the place of the Pope of Rome, because he has the letter from Pope Celestine to give him the authority to,
So he wasn't.
No.